Great. Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Worldviews. Today we have on Eric Burlison. Eric is a politician serving as the U.S. representative from Missouri's 7th congressional district and has been doing so since 2023. Eric, thanks for coming on Worldviews.
Great to be on.
Eric, can you just walk us through, just to kick us off, where your desire for politics came from and what was your road to becoming a U.S. representative?
Yeah, for me, it really stems from my faith. So, being a kid, my parents was very blessed to have parents that valued faith, and I grew up in the church, and the Church of the Nazarene, actually. And when the doors of the church were open, we were there. So Sunday school, Sunday morning service, usually potluck in the afternoon, and then evening service on Sundays, and then back on Wednesdays, right? So that was my life. But when I was 13, maybe, I think our pastor maybe needed a break. So on Sunday evenings, he popped in a video series called, it's by wall builders, a guy named David Barton out of Texas. And I think it was called America's Godly Heritage was the series. And that was my red pilled moment, because I realized that he was right, that our public school systems were really moving in a direction that was anti-God, that was, almost like a communist perspective, that God doesn't belong in the public square. And then they were really kind of trying to reshape history to say that our founding fathers were not Christians, which is not true whatsoever. So that was kind of my eye-opening experience, and I decided to get involved and get involved and support other elected officials at that time. So I've identified people that I knew were strong Christians who were in politics, and I would, I would go knock doors for them or stuff envelopes, put up signs, whatever they needed. I was just there to volunteer.
Okay, and interesting that you started so with your Christian faith, it sounds like. Do you find that there are many, I guess, legitimate Christians within the political spectrum in your experience?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's, we're not saints, right? Nobody's perfect. But there's many, I'm with a group that's called the Freedom Caucus. And I'll tell you, we pray a lot, and this, not just over our meals, but there's times when we truly call on God to give us wisdom. We have, sometimes we have long prayers together. And so there's a lot of really good people of faith in politics.
Interesting. And I know being in politics, people have this stigma that you kind of have to do some kind of, at times, corrupt actions within it. Have you found that there have been times where you've been tempted almost to have to compromise on your Christian faith to meet the needs of your political expectations or needs?
For me, no. And maybe it's because my mindset is that I identify as, first and foremost, a child of God, right? The creator of the universe. And as the idea of this blip that we have here on this planet, doing something that would, besmirch my reputation, that would, that I would have to look back on for eternity and regret, and that's kind of my worldview. So I try to, at the end of the day, I don't need the job if that's what it's going to take. If it means that I have to compromise my principles just to keep the job, then fine, somebody else can have it. I've got Jesus, and I know that I have a future with God.
Amen. Amen. And obviously, we're recording this on the 22nd. 2 days ago was the inauguration. Did you happen to be in DC for that?
Yeah, that was a huge honor, and that moment, speaking of faith, I was, when we were singing, some of the songs in there, I was getting goosebumps, right? And so, when Carrie Underwood was singing, "Oh Beautiful," right? When she said, "God shed His grace on thee," it was almost like a worship service. Like many members were raising their hands in praise. It was just a very powerful moment. And as I was looking on the walls in the rotunda, that you have paintings that really, again, that really dispel this myth that the United States is a secular institution. When on the walls in the rotunda, that very room where Trump was sworn in, you have a painting of the pilgrims, right? You have another painting that is the baptism. It's depicting the baptism of Pocahontas. In fact, if you read the story, she became a Christian. She was baptized. She wanted to be baptized, and when she was baptized, she wanted to change her name to Rebecca. And so, a lot of people don't know that Pocahontas took on a biblical name, Rebecca. And when you see that and you're in that room, it just was overwhelming. And especially to have a president like Donald Trump say, multiple times acknowledge God's glory and God's sparing his life. That he gives that praise to God.
Mm. Have you encountered President Trump in person before? Have you met him?
Yes, a couple times I've been able to spend a good amount of time with him. Once when he was on trial in New York, some of us would take turns and go and spend time with him. Go with him to the courtroom. So that was a day that I'll never forget. I went to New York first thing in the morning. Went to Trump Tower. They took us up to his residence. The one that you see some of the photos. It's just gorgeous. Spent time with him. Then we went down and got on a motorcade, and then went to the court to the trial, and got to spend a lot of time. Like when we would be in recess, we would go back to the conference room where Trump's team was located in, and just kind of chat about what was going on in between each of the recesses, and I'll tell you, Trump was in good spirits. He's extremely funny in person. You think he's funny on TV or when you see his speeches, he is even more hilarious in person. And you can just tell that he likes people. And what was funny that day, here's a guy who's a billionaire. And whenever they called for like when for lunch, Trump wanted pizza. So yeah, and it was probably 20 of us that were there, and his staff, they don't get anything fancy. It's there's like 10 boxes of all pepperoni pizza. And that's what I've heard about him. Like he's just like cheeseburgers, pizza. That's how he eats. He's not real fancy.
I assume these were like Pizza Hut or Papa John's. This wasn't like gourmet stuff.
It was New York pizza.
Oh, it was New York pizza.
From somewhere local, yeah.
Okay. Have you met other presidents as well besides Trump?
I've not. No, he's the first. I've been near Joe Biden, and then just in this inauguration, being pretty close and in the room with Obama and George W. Bush, and so that was kind of interesting. And Bill Clinton.
Okay,
interesting to see them from afar.
And what I find very unique and fascinating about your career too is that you got to sit in on the UAP/UFO congressional hearings, both I believe this past year and in 2023 for David Grusch and Louis Elizondo's speaking. How was the whole climate of that whole day, beforehand, during, and after? What were the emotions like? Can you just take us through that whole experience?
So these were two hearings. The first one was epic. I mean, there's often a crowd here in Washington, D.C., and especially oversight. There's usually some interest, but this was of a level no one has ever seen. You had people lined all throughout the building in a line to try to get into that hearing. And they were when you talk to those people, they were so excited just to get that Congress was looking into this, right? And I now for me, I'm a skeptic. I think it's foolish to just jump to a conclusion that these are little green men from another planet that travels here, I think that, I say, I'm from Missouri, you're going to have to show me, right? Like until I see it, I'm not going to believe it. But I will say, we have a responsibility. When we had testimony from fighter pilots who have said that their lives are at risk because they are encountering these UAPs, and sometimes there's near collisions with them that are reported. It is very disturbing, the level of activity, especially near our military bases and nuclear facilities. So it certainly is a security risk. But the biggest concern is that we know that there are programs that are operating in the dark, and they're not following the law. They're not reporting to Congress what their activities are. And so we need to remedy that. That's the purpose of oversight, is to make sure. I think we have a responsibility to root out where agencies are trying to avoid Congress.
Yeah, because given the subject of UAPs and among others, it appears that in fact the government is outside the control of either the democratic or judicial processes. Does this sort of match your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was one thing when David Grusch, testified in the hearing, and he talked about how these special access programs are, the overall program is compartmentalizing this topic into these many individual special access programs across the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, and intelligence. And so that way, none of these particular special access programs know the overall, what's happening overall. That was, and that level of secrecy, and what was confirmed by the Office of Inspector General when they investigated Grusch's claims that they're not being transparent. They were able to confirm, that Grusch is right, that these agencies are not being fully transparent, and they are over compartmentalizing.
Hmm. And
They weren't going to confirm the other things that Grusch said, that these are aliens from another planet, but that's not for them to do.
sure. And given that this whole phenomenon seems to be global, are there any type of plans to collaborate with any international governments or organizations to address these issues more comprehensively?
I don't think so, and I don't think that will ever happen, because I think that, if it truly is some kind of technology that is off-world, then there's a race to basically, to be able to get that technology, to reverse engineer that technology, if that's the case. So there's no way that they're going to work together with other
Mhm.
nations on that. But one of the things I found really interesting is that, the Arrow, which is the agency that's currently studying the UAP phenomenon, what they said to us is that the topic of aliens from another planet, or these UFOs, is not top secret. It's actually not a secret. It is. What I mean is that it's not a classified topic. It's not something that the federal government even has the ability to keep secret, because at the end of the day, the government is to protect government secrets, not information about, something that's outside of the federal government. But a lot of times, where the rubber meets the road is that you have footage or photos that have captured these objects, and the technology behind what has captured them through video or photos is top secret. And so because of that, that makes it extremely difficult to get access to view what information that we do have.
Mm, and
Does that make sense?
yes, yeah. How was the comparison from the Grush environment to the hearing with Elizondo?
Yeah, with Lou, that hearing, I don't know that there was a lot said that was different. If anything, it's underscoring what was said in the previous hearing. And as someone who is a skeptic, one has to wonder, how many, you know, we continue to have people from the deep state, from the military industrial complex, come forward and blow a whistle. At some point, it continues to lend credibility to the previous testimony.
Mm, and
And there's a spiritual aspect of this as well. I don't know if you have,
yes, there is, because he said even that he theorizes that these things come from a higher dimension, I believe is what he said.
yeah, David Grusch kind of was the line of questioning that I tried to go down with him, is that in his briefing, in his what he sent to us, he had discussed that one of the ongoing theories, or one of the dominant theories, is that these aliens are extra dimensional. In other words, they have the ability to exist outside of the normal dimensions that we live in. And my response to that is, okay, well then to me that sounds like angels. That sounds like angelic beings. And so I think that, and so there's an entire community of Christians who believe that, I don't think it's inconsistent with the Bible. I mean, they basically just say, I mean, clearly God describes other creatures when he's describing, seraphim and cherubim, and, what we classically call angels, that these are clearly different races that we don't normally recognize on planet Earth, right? And so the question is, do the cherubim and seraphim, are they like aliens from another planet? Do they have their own, place where they reside and they come from? And do they have the ability to travel here? And if so, it might explain, what some of the encounters in the Bible, where you have things that are clearly terrifying to see, because every time an angel is described as seeing someone, they have to first say, "Don't be afraid," right? So I don't, I've that is an interesting conversation, and as a Christian, it's fun to explore that conversation, but I still come back to the fact that at the end of the day, I cannot. I'm not going to jump to a conclusion and believe that these are little green men, or something from another planet, until I actually get my hands on something or see something.
Sure, because on the flip side of that too, there is a sort of darkness as well involved with the UAP phenomenon that seems to be even more harmful. And I know many Christians theorize that there is some kind of demonic uh, part of it too, as well as the angelic part of it as well. Which makes me think, for you and your colleagues, were there, I guess, challenges with opposition between what you guys were thinking amongst your colleagues when it came to the hearings, like the post results of them?
No, I think generally there's, like, everyone has a very inquisitive attitude. Now, some people they're absolutely sold that these are aliens from another planet. They're I think they can't come into this conversation believing that. And I don't want to, I personally don't want to do that. I don't want to presuppose. I want to actually have a thoughtful dialogue and investigate and try to get down to real truth, because it could very well, and this is what I said in the hearing, is that, isn't it more likely, as opposed to when people talk about the odds, and I'll concede, like, the universe is vast, it's huge, and if you give the argument when people say, surely somewhere out in this vast universe there's other life on other planets. I'm not going to argue with that, but what I will say is, it also means that, given the vastness of the universe, of all the places that another life on another planet is going to go, why in the world would they come here? Right? The same argument holds. If the universe is that vast, that means that the likelihood is very, very unlikely that, of all places, that they would travel exactly here. Does that make sense? And so that's why I said, Occam's razor, which is basically the most obvious conclusion, is that is that what we're seeing is either are top secret military planes, and I've been in skiff meetings with Arrow and others who have shown us some of the famous footage and photos that people talk about as being UFOs, and then they will identify them as some of our military, some of the U.S. military's assets. And then there's also times where it's just people take photos and they end up being balloons, right? Or just or like an appearance of something that can be explained. But I think the most likely scenario is that we either what people are seeing is either U.S. military advanced avionics, or experimental aviation that is done by our private businesses. Like, you've got Lockheed Martin, you have Boeing, you've got Raytheon. There's a lot of companies that are in that space. And if you think about it, if Raytheon, for example, is working on a particular project, then Lockheed Martin isn't going to know about what Raytheon is working on, because that's by design. They want to keep their trade secrets. And so I think that dynamic can create the opportunity for there to be confusion about what is actually flying around.
Interesting, because I remember even in one of those hearings, I guess Ryan Graves, who it was talking about an incident where a black cube was inside of a translucent sphere flying, and it split between two pilots. So you would think that was something that was technology from Earth.
Yes.
Really?
That is technology from Earth.
Wow. Do you think it was a drone, or do you think someone was actually... There's no way someone was actually flying that thing.
I believe they're drones.
Drones.
And they're very rudimentary as well. Like, they have that appearance, but they're rudimentary. We're not talking about advanced technology.
Interesting, because even the speed of the Tic Tac object, they said it went from point A to point B, which is about 80 miles. It covered it within a second of time, and that's...
Yeah. Now, the Tic Tac event is a separate event, and it is unique. And this is what one of the things I've come to the conclusion is that, and even people that are full on believe in UFOs, believe that they're extraterrestrial. When I talk to the people that are truly experts and study this phenomenon a lot, they will say that 99.9% of the photos and videos and events are not a real UFO experience. They say, but there are a small handful of events that we cannot account for, that the federal government is still investigating, and the Tic Tac event is one that we do not have an explanation for that event. And so there are very few of these, but at the end of the day, there are some. There's a very small handful of things, and I think that Arrow, when I had a meeting with them, they have a few dozen that they're events that they're still researching and trying to determine what ultimately what it was.
Yeah, and then for you personally, with the hearings, it seems like people that are very much into the UAP phenomenon feel like the government has withheld quite a lot of information from them. Do you feel like your role within the hearings is also to somehow regain the trust of the American citizens, and how do you think you can go about doing so?
Yeah, absolutely. I think disclosure is something that has to happen. The Trump administration, I think he's campaigned that he wants to be the disclosure president, that he's going to be, blunt with the American people. I think that the topic of UFOs has come up. I can't remember if he has said publicly that he would do disclosure on the topic, but I know that, for example, the JFK files, he's been pretty open about the fact that he's going to release all of the remainder of the JFK files, and quite a few other things. So I think that we are going to learn a lot over this next 4 years.
And the UAP hearings, I'm sure those had to be the most unique hearings you've ever been a part of, unless there's others that you want to discuss.
They certainly are. being in an oversight committee is really the funnest committee in Congress because the topic changes from month to month or week to week. So we had when I first got there, we had a hearing on the Twitter file, the Twitter gate, when Elon had purchased Twitter and then uncovered, and gave access to reporters who were able to uncover all of the, manipulation, all the censorship that was happening behind the scenes at Twitter. They're working hand in glove with the federal government to block conservative speech. That was one of the most interesting hearings that I've had. And so it's a committee that is extremely fun to be on.
What stuck out to you from the hearing you just mentioned?
I'm sorry, what?
What stuck out to you the most about the hearing you just mentioned about Twitter?
So I think the impact on the American people, right? I think every American, many Americans understand, and not everybody is on Twitter, but so many people are on some form of social media, and to have it be revealed that that the federal government is working, behind the scenes in such an intimate way with the social media companies to block free speech. That was monumental.
Mm, mm. Well, it sounds like you've quite the interesting career. What are some things you still want to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, for me, one of the biggest reasons why I ran for office is try to return to fiscal sanity. We're $36 trillion in debt. We spend, we add another 2 trillion to 3 trillion each year to that national debt. So something has to change. We're now just the interest payments alone on this debt is now the largest cost of the federal government. We spend more money on interest than we do on all of our military, which is extremely disturbing. And it's only going to get worse until Congress, does what it needs to do and start cutting spending. Look, when Congress spends more money than it brings in taxes, any economist will tell you that's inflationary spending. So when politicians complain about inflation, they need to look no further than themselves, because we're the ones that are causing. When you go to McDonald's and you buy, a value meal and it's higher than $10, $12, whatever. It just keeps going. People, you ought to get mad, and the people you should get mad at is Congress, because it's Congress and their lack of will or desire to cut spending is what's driving up the costs of everything.
Mm, mm. Okay, I have two more questions for you because I know you have just a little bit more time. You work heavily in politics. You see a lot of things that the average American citizen does not see. Could you paint for us some common misconceptions that the U.S. citizens have about the government?
Okay, I'll give you some about members of Congress. For example, it's not exactly the most glamorous job in the world. Like, I sleep in my office. I don't get to, now some members do the same thing. I mean, there's quite a few members that sleep in their office. I'm on a plane probably 14 to 15 hours a week because I fly in on a Monday, fly back on a Thursday typically, and I have to do 2 legs because I don't have a direct flight. So I spend a lot of my life on a plane or in an airport. And the other thing is, like, people assume that Congress has these great cushy pensions and health insurance. That's not at all the case either. Like, the pension plan is absolutely awful. It's really almost nothing. And which is fine. I mean, that's not why you get the job. And the other thing is healthcare. We are required to purchase Obamacare. So my health insurance costs went way through the roof because Obamacare plans are much more expensive than plans that you can get through your employer. So, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying,
Sure.
a lot of people, these are things that people preconceive, and they assume that we get cushy pensions and we get, luxurious living and all this kind of stuff. It's not exactly that glamorous. But I mean, I'm not going to complain. I came up here because I didn't necessarily want the job, but I just want to save this country. And there are a handful of people that are like that. But there's also a lot of people. The people that frustrate me the most are the people that enjoy the job. They're here because this was a ride. They're cozy with all the lobbyists because someday they want to be a lobbyist and make lots of money. Those are the people that are selling out this country. And whether they're Republican or Democrat, like, look, the swamp is real and it's bipartisan. Republicans and Democrats, that are part of this deep state that just want to continue to grow the federal government, increase spending, and pad their next jobs. It's sad, but that's the case. And until the American people identify who those people are and remove them, we've got dark days ahead.
Mm, great. Okay, last question for you. Since you're a Christian as well, so this will be, I assume, a very interesting answer from your end. You get to ask God one question, and He will answer it right then and there. What do you ask Him?
How could how could you possibly love us?
R- Interesting. Yeah, I've never heard that one before.
Because
That's a
we don't deserve it. We don't deserve it whatsoever. How could someone so awesome, powerful, how could the God, the creator of the universe, love just us? I mean, we're pathetic. We're fail, and we continue to fail him again and again, and yet he loves us.
good answer. Well, look, I appreciate it. It was lovely talking to you. Really good insight, and I really appreciate your genuineness and your love for the Lord. It's really cool to see, especially in something that's in the field of politics.
Thank you. Appreciate it.